The massive alien dreadnought Velthara hung motionless in the void, its crystalline sensors trained on the blue-green marble that had once been the birth world of the most feared species in the galaxy. Commander Kix-Andal's 4 eyes narrowed, as his tactical officer reported the same readings they'd monitored for 2 centuries. "Still nothing, Commander. No energy signatures, no transmissions, no movement beyond natural atmospheric disturbances." Earth remained silent, as it had for 20 millennia. Kix-Andal's clawed appendages clicked against his command throne. The hegemony of 12 worlds maintained this vigil not out of respect, but out of terror. Every child in the galaxy knew the stories, how humanity had emerged from their small world like a plague of locusts, conquering system after system with impossible tenacity and brutal efficiency. How they had refused every offer of surrender, every plea for mercy, until the combined fleets of 12 civilizations had finally managed to contain them on their homeworld. The orbital bombardment had lasted 3 years. When the fires finally died, the silence began. "Sir," the communications officer, a nervous Trilaxian named Yeth Mora, suddenly straightened. "I'm detecting something." Kix-Andal's blood chilled. "Specify." "Single ship, emerging from Earth's shadow. Design unknown." But Yeth Mora's tendrils trembled. "The energy signature is consistent with human technology." The bridge fell silent except for the hum of life support systems. Kix-Andal stared at the tactical display where a small blip had appeared, accelerating away from Earth at an impossible rate. "How fast is it moving?" "0.7. Light speed and climbing, sir. That should be impossible without a singularity drive, but scans show no gravitational distortion. The ship was sleek, organic-looking, nothing like the angular war machines humanity had fielded millennia ago. It moved with purpose, heading straight for the outer system's edge where the hegemony maintained its monitoring stations. "Alert all ships, battle stations." Kix-Andal's voice carried across the fleet frequency. "The humans have returned." As if summoned by those words, the mysterious vessel suddenly decelerated, coming to a complete stop relative to the hegemony fleet. For long moments, nothing happened. Then, impossibly, a transmission began, not on standard galactic frequencies, but on the ancient emergency channels used during the human wars. The voice that emerged from the speakers was calm, measured, and unmistakably human. "This is Captain Kessa-Andra Vale of the exploration vessel Wanderer's End. We wish to speak with whoever leads this fleet." Kix-Andal's mind raced. The name was human, but wrong somehow. Ancient, yet evolved. How had they survived the bombardment? Where had they been hiding for 20,000 years? "This is Commander Kix-Andal of the Hegemony Monitoring Fleet. You will surrender immediately and prepare to be boarded." Laughter, actual laughter, echoed through the communication channel. "Commander, we've been watching you watch our world for centuries. We know about your patrols, your sensor nets, your contingency plans. We've learned much in our exile, and we've grown beyond what we once were. But we haven't forgotten." The human ship began to move again, not toward the fleet, but parallel to it, as if daring them to attack. 20,000 years ago, you drove us from the stars," Captain Vale continued. "Today we return not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous, as teachers. The galaxy is about to learn what humanity became when it had nothing left to lose but time itself." 21,000 years earlier, as the first kinetic bombardment round screamed through Earth's atmosphere, Dr. Liana Faust had made a decision that would reshape the future of her species. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice, in laboratories carved from living rock, she and 30,000 of humanity's brightest minds had activated the Threshold Protocol. "The surface is lost," she had whispered to the assembled scientists, engineers, and philosophers who would become the foundation of new humanity. "But the deep places remain. While their world burned above, they had descended further than any human had gone before, not just into the Earth's crust, but into the quantum foundations of reality itself. Using technologies barely understood even by their creators, they had learned to manipulate space-time on a subatomic level, creating pockets of accelerated time within the planet's core. In chambers where seconds passed like days, they had lived. Lifetimes of research and development. Generations had been born, lived, and died while mere hours passed on the surface. They had evolved, not just technologically, but fundamentally, becoming something that transcended the limitations of their original biology. Captain Cassandra Vale was the product of that evolution. Her consciousness a hybrid of organic neural patterns and quantum processors that could perceive reality across multiple dimensional layers simultaneously. She stood on the bridge of the Wanderer's End, feeling the fear radiating from the alien fleet through sensors that existed partially outside normal space-time. "They're powering weapons," reported her first officer, Nixariel Prime, a being who had once been 3 separate humans before the convergence protocols had merged their consciousness into something greater. "Let them," Cassandra replied, her voice carrying harmonics that would have been impossible for an unmodified human throat to produce. "Show them what we've learned." The Wanderer's End had been grown rather than built, its hull composed of programmable matter that could adapt to any threat or environment. As the first energy beams from the hegemony fleet struck its surface, the ship simply absorbed the energy, converting it into pure information and storing it within its quantum substrate. "Fascinating," Nixariel observed. "Their weapons haven't improved much since the old days." Aboard the Velthara, chaos erupted as tactical displays showed impossible readings. Their most powerful plasma cannons were having no effect. The human ship was somehow eating their attacks. "Sir, we should retreat," Yethmora suggested, her voice shaking. "Contact High Command. Request the full battle fleet." But Kixandel knew it was already too late. The human ship had begun to sing, not with sound, but with gravitational waves that resonated through every atom of their vessels. Their shields flickered and died as the wave patterns interfered with their defensive matrices. "We are not here to fight you." Captain Vale's voice echoed through their hulls, bypassing their communication systems entirely and speaking directly to their neural implants. "We are here to offer you a choice." The Wanderer's End suddenly appeared simultaneously in 12 different locations around the fleet, each manifestation solid and real, yet connected in ways that violated every known law of physics. "Your species have spent 20 millennia believing you had contained the human threat," Vale continued. "You maintained your vigil, your fleets, your contingency plans. But you never asked the right question. What were the humans doing during those 20,000 years of silence?" One by one, the hegemony ships found their weapon systems shutting down, not through force, but through the gentle manipulation of their quantum states. The humans weren't attacking. They were demonstrating absolute superiority over the physical laws that governed conventional warfare. "We have transcended the need for conquest," Vale explained, "but we have not transcended the need for justice." The emergency session of the Hegemony Council convened within hours, representatives from all 12 worlds gathering in the crystal chambers of Nexus Prime. High Archon Zephula, eldest of the Valdarian hierarchs, called the assembly to order with trembling appendages. "The impossible has occurred," she announced to the assembled delegates. "Humanity has returned." Panic rippled through the chamber. The Court Thani representative, Ambassador Velnis, rose on his 6 legs and spoke in urgent clicks. "Our frontier. Monitoring stations report similar vessels emerging from dead systems throughout the Outer Rim. Not just Earth. Everywhere we drove them, they're returning." The holographic displays showed a galaxy-wide map, red dots appearing like a spreading infection across previously dark sectors. Each dot represented a human ship, moving with impossible technology toward populated systems. "How many?" Archon Zephula demanded. 730 vessels detected so far. reported the synthetic intelligence that served as the Council's military advisor, each demonstrating capabilities that exceed our current understanding of physics. On Earth, Captain Cassandra Vale felt the fear cascading across the galactic communication networks. Her evolved consciousness could perceive the electromagnetic chatter of an entire civilization as it grappled with the return of its greatest nightmare. But she also felt something else: the awakening of her scattered people as they emerged from their hidden sanctuaries across the galaxy. Not all humans had been on Earth when the bombardment began. Some had been explorers, scientists, colonists on distant worlds. When the hegemony had come for them, they too had gone underground, literally and metaphorically, adapting the threshold protocol to whatever environments they found themselves in: the volcanic cores of gas giants, the quantum foam between dimensions, the event horizons of black holes where time dilated to infinite crawls. Humanity had learned to thrive in places where other species couldn't even survive, and they had done so for 20,000 years. Nixariel, Cassandra spoke to her first officer. "Open a channel to the collective. It's time." The response came instantly, not through space, but through the quantum entanglement networks that connected every evolved human consciousness across the galaxy. 730 captains, each the leader of their own pocket of new humanity, spoke as one. "We hear you, Prime Sister. The long exile ends today." Back in the hegemony fleet, Commander Kixandel watched helplessly as more human ships began to emerge from the quantum foam around Earth. Not dozens, hundreds. Each one unique, adapted to different environments and purposes, but all sharing the same impossible technological signature. "Sir," Yethmora whispered, "we're receiving a transmission. Not just us, everyone. Every ship, every station, every world in the hegemony." The transmission bypassed all their security protocols, appearing simultaneously on every screen, every neural interface, every communication device in the galaxy. Captain Vale's image materialized, but she was no longer alone. Behind her stood representatives of new humanity from across the stars, beings who had once been human but had evolved into something that transcended species classifications. "Children of the 12 worlds," Vale began, her voice reaching every corner of hegemony space simultaneously. 20,000 years ago, your ancestors made a choice. They chose fear over understanding, violence over cooperation. They drove us from the light of stars and believed they had solved the problem of human ambition. The image shifted, showing the bombardment of Earth, the systematic hunting of human colonies, the genocide that had scattered her people across the void. "You created us," she continued. "Your persecution forced us to become something your ancestors never imagined possible. We learned to survive in the spaces between atoms, in the gaps between seconds, in the darkness between stars. We became more than human because being merely human was no longer enough." The assembled representatives of new humanity stepped forward, each radiating an aura of power that made the galaxy's most advanced AIs seem primitive by comparison. "Now we return, not as the species you remember, but as something entirely new, and we bring with us an ultimatum. The ultimatum came not as words, but as direct experience. Every member of the hegemony, from the lowliest maintenance worker to the highest archon, suddenly found themselves experiencing human memory. They felt the terror of families huddled in shelters as kinetic strikes turned their cities to glass. They experienced the desperate last messages sent between dying colonies as hegemony fleets systematically eliminated human settlements. They lived through the moment when Earth's orbital defense platforms fell silent one by one, leaving billions defenseless against the bombardment that followed. In the council chambers, several representatives collapsed as the full weight of their species' historical guilt crashed into their consciousness. Others screamed, unable to process the emotional intensity of experiencing genocide from the victim's perspective. "Stop!" Archon Zephyla gasped, her ancient form racked with psychic trauma. "Please, stop!" The visions ceased, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. Captain Vale's voice resumed, calm and implacable. "That was merely a fraction of what we endured. We want you to understand what your fear created. Not just the deaths of billions, but the birth of something your ancestors never anticipated." The holographic display shifted, showing the hidden sanctuaries where new humanity had developed over 20 millennia. Vast caverns where time moved differently, allowing centuries of research in mere days. Cities built within the quantum substrate of reality itself, existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. Laboratories where the boundaries between biology and technology had been erased entirely. "We evolved beyond the need for physical form," Vale explained, as images showed humans who had become living equations. Consciousness merged with the fundamental forces of the universe. "We learned to exist as pure information, to manipulate matter at the subatomic level, to perceive time as a navigable dimension rather than a linear constraint." Commander Kixandel, still reeling from the psychic assault, managed to find his voice. What do you want from us?" "Justice," Vale replied simply. "But not the kind you fear." The human ships around Earth began to move in perfect synchronization, forming patterns that seemed to bend space itself. Similar formations appeared around every major hegemony world as the scattered vessels of new humanity took their positions. 4. 20,000 years you have lived in a galaxy shaped by fear, Vale continued. Fear of human ambition, human violence, human expansion. You built your entire civilization around the principle that some species were too dangerous to coexist with. You made yourselves the arbiters of who deserved to survive and who deserved extinction. The patterns the human ships were creating began to resonate, generating gravitational harmonics that could be felt on every world in the galaxy. It wasn't threatening. It was beautiful, like a vast cosmic symphony being played on the strings of space-time itself. Today, that paradigm ends, not through conquest or revenge, but through transcendence. On Nexus Prime, the Council members watched in awe as their sensors detected something impossible. The human ships were somehow stabilizing the fabric of reality itself, creating pockets of enhanced space-time that would allow faster than light travel without the devastating side effects that had limited galactic expansion for millennia. "We offer you a choice," Vale announced. "Continue as you are, bound by the limitations of your current technology and the weight of your historical guilt, or join us in the next phase of galactic evolution." Ambassador Velness, still shaking from the memory experience, struggled to speak. "Join you? After what our ancestors did?" "Your ancestors acted from fear and ignorance," Vale replied. "But you are not your ancestors. You have the opportunity to be something better, to learn from the past rather than be condemned by it." The gravitational patterns intensified, and suddenly every being in the galaxy could feel it. A sensation of infinite possibility, of barriers dissolving, of the universe itself becoming more than it had been before. "This is our gift to the galaxy," Vale said. "Not conquest, but elevation. Not revenge, but redemption." The first to accept were the ethereal collective of Andros VII, beings of living energy who had always struggled with the physical limitations of matter. When the human ship Synthesis Dawn arrived in their system, Captain Morveth, a human consciousness that existed as pure mathematics given form, demonstrated how their people could transcend even energy states to become something entirely new. Within hours, the ethereals had evolved beyond recognition, their consciousness expanding to encompass entire star systems. They sang their gratitude across quantum frequencies, their joy becoming a tangible force that accelerated stellar fusion in nearby suns. The transformation cascaded across the galaxy. The aquatic delphinians of Oceanus merged with human biotechnology. to become living ecosystems capable of surviving in the void between stars. The crystalline architects of Terran Prime learned to manipulate matter at the molecular level, reshaping worlds with thought alone. But not all welcomed the change. Admiral Quarks, then, of the hegemony's first battle fleet, had spent his entire career preparing for humanity's return. As his massive dreadnought Extinction's Edge approached the Sol system, he broadcast on all frequencies. Humanity destroyed us once through their ambition. We will not allow them to destroy us again through their false gifts. His fleet of 300 vessels represented the most advanced military technology the hegemony had developed in 20 millennia. Each ship carried weapons capable of cracking planets, shields that could deflect stellar radiation, and AI systems designed specifically to counter human tactical patterns from the ancient wars. Captain Vale watched their approach with something approaching sadness. Through her evolved consciousness, she could perceive the fear patterns that drove Admiral Quarks's then. Generational trauma passed down through genetic memory, cultural conditioning that equated change with death, and the terrible weight of being responsible for an entire species' survival. "He believes he's protecting his people," she said to Nyx Ariel Prime, who nodded with multiple levels of understanding. "The old paradigm dies hard," Nyx Ariel observed. "Perhaps it's time for a more direct demonstration." The Wanderer's End moved to intercept the hegemony fleet, but instead of manifesting as a single vessel, it began to unfold across multiple dimensions. What appeared to be one ship revealed itself as a complex structure existing in 17 different layers of reality, simultaneously. "This is Admiral Quarks, then, of the Hegemony Defense Force," came the transmission. "You will withdraw from this system immediately or face the consequences." "Admiral," Vale responded, her voice carrying harmonics of deep compassion, "we do not wish to fight you. We wish to free you. Freedom through subjugation is not freedom at all. The first energy barrage from the hegemony fleet was unlike anything deployed during the ancient wars. Quantum disruptors designed to unravel matter at the subatomic level, gravitic missiles that could collapse local space-time, and exotic particle beams that existed partially outside normal reality. Each weapon struck the Wanderer's End and simply stopped, not deflected or absorbed, but fundamentally altered at the moment of impact. The destructive energy became constructive, the weapons of war transforming into tools of creation. Where the quantum disruptors hit, they began reconstructing the ship's hull into increasingly complex patterns. The gravitic missiles created beautiful, space-time sculptures that enhanced local stellar mechanics. The exotic particle beams generated aurora effects that painted the void in colors that had no names. "Impossible," Admiral Quarks then whispered, as his tactical displays showed readings that defied comprehension. They weren't just failing to damage the human ship, they were somehow making it more beautiful. "Not impossible," Vale replied, her voice now reaching every crew member on every ship in the fleet. "Inevitable. This is what happens when consciousness evolves beyond the need for conflict." The Wanderer's End began to sing, not with sound, but with pure meaning transmitted directly to the quantum foam of space-time itself. The song told the story of new humanity's journey from rage to transcendence, from the desire for revenge, to the understanding that all consciousness was connected at the deepest levels of reality. As the song progressed, something extraordinary happened. The hegemony fleet began to harmonize with it, their ship AIs adding their own mathematical melodies to the composition. The crews found themselves weeping as they experienced, for the first time in 20,000 years, a universe where conflict was not the inevitable result of difference. "We offer you the same choice we offered the others," Vale said softly. "Evolution or stagnation, unity or isolation. The choice is yours, but choose knowing that the galaxy is already changing around you." 3 months after first contact, the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. Entire star systems had become living entities. their planets serving as organs in vast cosmic organisms capable of thought and creativity on scales previously unimaginable. Trade routes now followed, paths through folded space-time, reducing interstellar journeys from years to minutes. Art had evolved to include the manipulation of fundamental forces, with sculptors carving beauty from the quantum vacuum itself. But in the heavily fortified Terminus sector, the last bastion of the old hegemony remained unchanged. Marshal Drexana. Voss had consolidated the remaining traditionalist forces around the fortress world of Bastion Prime, a planet-sized military installation surrounded by automated defense platforms that had been upgraded with every weapon system imaginable. Nearly 1 billion sentients from species across the galaxy had fled there, choosing the familiar certainty of potential destruction over the unknown realm of evolutionary transcendence. Status report, Marshal Voss demanded as she strode through. The command center's titanium corridors. Perimeter remains secure, reported her aide, Lieutenant Keferos. The humans maintain their positions at the edge of the system, but they haven't moved closer in weeks. Voss studied the tactical displays, showing the human vessels arranged in a perfect sphere around the Terminus sector. Not attacking, not retreating, simply waiting with infinite patience. They're playing a psychological game, she muttered, trying to make us come to them. What Marshal Voss didn't understand was that the human ships weren't waiting for surrender. They were waiting for understanding. Captain Vale had positioned the Wanderer's End at the precise gravitational focal point where the system's quantum harmonics created a natural amplification field. Every day she broadcast not propaganda or demands, but pure memory, the experiences of species that had chosen evolution. The broadcasts showed the former hegemony worlds where scarcity had become obsolete, where death was no longer permanent, where consciousness could exist in forms that spanned multiple dimensions. Children born after the convergence displayed abilities that their parents couldn't comprehend. Teleportation through folded space, communication across galactic distances through quantum entanglement, the ability to perceive and manipulate probability itself. These memories seeped through Bastion Prime's shields not as invasive thoughts, but as dreams. Night after night, the holdouts experienced visions of what they could become, and each morning, more of them began to question whether their fear was worth the price of isolation. Marshal, Lieutenant Keferos said hesitantly during one of their daily briefings, the junior officers are asking questions. What kind of questions? About the broadcasts, about what's happening in the transformed sectors. Some of them want to know, what if the humans are telling the truth? Voss's 4 arms tensed as she turned to face her aide. Lieutenant, are you questioning our mission? No, Marshal, but my daughter was born 3 days ago. She'll grow up in this fortress, never seeing natural sunlight, never experiencing anything beyond these walls. The humans aren't attacking us. They're not demanding surrender. They're just offering something else. Before Voss could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. But these weren't attack warnings. They were departure alerts. Marshal, a technician called out. We're detecting mass movement in the civilian sectors. Thousands of people are requesting permission to leave the fortress. The view screen showed streams of beings walking calmly toward the docking bays, not in panic or desperation, but with a strange sense of purpose. Families, individuals, entire communities, all moving toward the shuttle bays with their few possessions. Stop them, Voss ordered. On what grounds, Marshal? Lieutenant Keferos asked quietly. They're not prisoners. They came here voluntarily, and they can leave voluntarily. As if in response to his words, Captain Vale's voice echoed through the fortress's communication systems, not forced or invasive, but somehow invited by the collective unconscious of those who had chosen to stay. Marshal Voss, Vale said, her tone carrying no mockery or superiority, only infinite compassion. Your people are free to choose their path. Those who wish to remain with you may do so, but we will not abandon them to isolation. Over the following days, nearly half of Bastion Prime's population departed in waves, each group welcomed by human vessels that arrived precisely when needed. The fortress that had once housed 1 billion souls now echoed with the footsteps of fewer than 500 million. Those too afraid to change, too committed to the old ways, or too loyal to Marshal Voss to abandon her. Marshal Voss stood alone, on the observation deck, watching the last transport disappear into the quantum fold created by a human escort ship. Lieutenant Keferos had been among the departures, carrying his newborn daughter toward a future his species had never imagined possible. "They'll regret it," she whispered to the empty chamber. "When the humans reveal their true nature, when the conquest begins, they'll remember that we tried to protect them." But weeks passed, then months, and the promised conquest never came. Instead, the departing population sent messages, not pleas to return or propaganda for the new order, but simple updates on their lives. Former soldiers had become explorers of dimensional mathematics. Scientists had merged with cosmic phenomena to study the universe from the inside. Artists had learned to paint with gravity itself. The messages weren't trying to convince her of anything. They were simply sharing joy. As the months turned to years, something extraordinary happened. The human ships surrounding Terminus Sector began to change. Not through any external force, but through a process that Voss slowly came to understand. The vessels were evolving, in response to the emotional resonance of the beings they protected. The fear and isolation radiating from Bastion Prime was literally reshaping the quantum matrix of the human ships, turning them into something new. They became monuments, not to conquest or defeat, but to the right of choice itself. Beautiful, crystalline structures that sang with harmonics, designed specifically to comfort those who lived in fear. They generated fields that stabilized local space-time, ensuring that Bastion Prime would remain safe regardless of cosmic catastrophes. They created zones of enhanced probability where the impossible became merely unlikely. The humans were transforming themselves into eternal guardians, dedicated to protecting those who chose isolation over evolution. "Why?" Voss finally asked during one of her daily communications with Captain Vale. "Why protect us when we represent everything you've moved beyond?" Vale's image appeared not on a screen, but as a presence in the observation deck itself. Not physical, but somehow more real than mere matter. Her evolved form shimmered with possibilities, a being of pure consciousness that had chosen to maintain connection to her human origins. "Because fear is also sacred," Vale replied. "Because the right to say no is as fundamental as the right to say yes. Because a galaxy where everyone must evolve is no freer than a galaxy where no one can." The revelation hit Voss like a physical blow. The humans hadn't been offering conquest disguised as evolution. They had been offering true choice, including the choice to remain unchanged. "But don't you want everyone to become what you've become?" Voss asked. "We want everyone to become what they choose to become," Vale corrected. "For most, that means transcendence. For some, it means remaining as they are. Both paths require the same courage." As Voss watched, more human ships arrived in the Terminus sector, not to attack or persuade, but to reinforce the protective barrier around Bastion Prime. Each vessel was different, adapted to support the specific fears and needs of those who had chosen isolation. They created artificial suns that would burn for millions of years, ensuring the fortress would never lack for energy. They wove probability fields that would prevent accidents or disasters. They established quantum communication networks so that those inside could stay in contact with the transformed galaxy without being forced to join it. The humans were building a perfect prison for fear itself, but a prison with all doors permanently open. "We will wait," Captain Vale said as her presence began to fade. "For as long as it takes, for as many generations as choose to remain here, we will wait." And when the last of you decides they're ready to choose something different, we'll still be here." Marshal Voss looked out at the protective fleet, understanding finally dawning. The humans hadn't returned for conquest or revenge. They had returned to complete a promise made 20,000 years ago in the depths of Earth's quantum laboratories. They had promised to become more than human. They had promised to transcend the cycle of fear and violence that had defined galactic civilization since the beginning, and they had kept that promise. In the transformed galaxy beyond Terminus Sector, consciousness explored forms undreamed of by any previous generation. Beings of pure thought danced between stars. Living equations rewrote the laws of physics in pursuit of greater beauty. Entire civilizations had merged into cosmic entities that spanned multiple dimensions while maintaining the individuality of every consciousness within them. But in the Terminus Sector, a billion beings lived in comfortable isolation, protected by the very species they had once feared above all others, and the humans who guarded them did so not out of duty or conquest, but out of love for the fundamental right to choose one's own path, even if that path led away from transcendence itself. The galaxy had finally learned the most human trait of all, that true strength meant protecting even those who chose weakness, and that the greatest power was knowing when not to use it. The long exile was over. The great choice had been made, and for the first time in 20,000 years, the universe was truly free.